Three, two, one. Welcome to the Lightforge. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merps, and we are. It seems like a long time. I don't know why. The expansion has only come out for less than a week, but it's felt like a long time.
Right?
Maybe it was all the streams this week.
Yeah, but you remember the last time that we did like the card preview evaluation stream, right? That was for like 6.5 hours, and that seems like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. Maybe even a month ago.
Fastest one we've ever done.
Yeah.
So fast.
All right, so we're in the Rastakhan meta now, fully in the meta, and we have basically two topics to cover today. One is, what is the meta now that we're in it, now that we know? And two, what are some general bucketing things that have happened? Arena Drafts has given us their bucketing data right now. It's not like there's not enough sample size right now to be definitive about a lot of like the more fringe cards. So, and also Blizzard is most likely going to change all the bucketing up anyway very quickly in maybe a week or so. So we're not updating the Lightforge tier list with the new buckets yet. Although we do encourage you to use Arena Drafts. It's what we use. And that'll help Arena Drafts gather more data, which will have the information come to us. And then when they have enough information to fit a sample size, we will actually have the bucketing data and the tier list can be updated. So that's that, but we'll go into some more specifics. So you wanna start with that, with some of the bucketing things, or you want to start with just the meta overall?
You know what? I think we should talk about the bucketing first, because if we're talking about the meta, it's like as soon as you talk about the meta, you're going to talk about all of these new cards, right? So we might as well just start talking about the bucketing thing first, like zone in and then zoom out.
Okay, sounds good. All right, starting from the bottom, starting from deep zoomed in. This is what Blizzard thought the meta was going to be like. They thought the best cards were, number one, Baited Arrow and Mark of the Loa at the top of the second bucket. Now, Mark of the Loa, definitely insane. Give them that. Everybody had it at the very top. The Mark of the Loa is a druid card that creates 2 raptors, or is a Valence Chosen with taunt, but no spell damage for 4 mana. And it's insane, and we played it. We got a 12-win run with a deck with 2 of them, right? Like, it's a great card.
Yeah, so, all right, I'm going to do this because we rarely do this. For those of you guys perhaps listening to this for the first time, let's give them a 20-second version of what buckets are and why they're important, right? We might have new listeners. Ever since last year, or basically it's been about a year, Blizzard
Warning, this will take longer than 20 seconds.
I know. Blizzard changed the drafting system so that not all the cards are offered with every other card. So they have buckets now in which certain cards are only offered with certain other cards. Now, what does this mean? When we come out with cards, you can't say, oh, this card is good, this card is bad, objectively, and apply it to a real game drafting scenario. The only thing that matters is how good is it in comparison to the other cards that are offered with it. And then when we talk about buckets, it means the specific group that cards are kind of, grouped together in. And then this is what we're talking about. And there are 7 buckets. That is the most general explanation I can give. Let's move on.
Yeah, okay. So one thing more you have to know is that the top 2 buckets are really small. There are fewer and fewer cards the higher up in buckets you go. So in bucket 1, you're competing against the super OP cards like UI and stuff. In bucket 2, you're competing against other really good cards. Bucket 3 is even pretty good. That's like basically where Yeti is. And at bucket 4, you start getting more like your normal cards that you see in Arena. Bucket 6 and bucket 7 are supposed to be filled with terrible cards, and they reduce the offering rate so that you don't see them as often. And they are very conservative about all this. Before they were conservative, so there's a bucketing philosophy change in Rastakhan that happened, that did not happen in Boomsday, or that was not there in Boomsday, or especially Witchwood. In Witchwood, they basically over-bucketed everything. And they over-bucketed everything, and we never saw Witchwood cards until they rebucketed. But they rebucketed very quickly. In Boomsday, they were a little less conservative, but still mostly things got over-bucketed more so than under-bucketed. In Rastakhan, they're getting a little more confident about their bucketing system and their prediction ability. God knows why. And I think they just tried to put things in the buckets that they thought they actually were. So it's all kind of centered. and you have a lot of cards in like the 4th and 5th buckets, which is fine. That's not going to make a ton of a difference. And then, but the bigger problem is that you also have a lot of really good cards that are in here. And when the really good cards are not conservatively bucketed to be higher, they're gonna be very auto picks. So you got a few auto picks in here, and we'll get to those. But first, Mark of the Loa, Baited Arrow in the 2nd bucket. We're saying this as in Blizzard thought these are good, which means you're not gonna get too much of an advantage actually picking them. Like, they're going to be up against other good cards. And Baited Arrow, by the way, we rated very lowly, and then we caught a bug in Baited Arrow, and then we upgraded our overkill mechanic as well. So Baited Arrow is going to end up at around a 135, actually. I know we have it right now at like a 105 or whatever. That's wrong. So Baited Arrow...
Really? Okay.
Baited Arrow is like... well, it's... because you play aggressive hunter only.
Well, no. So I saw the run that you had yesterday. That went 12, right? And...
Baited Arrow was MVP. That got the golden card.
No, it was good. But then there were those still 20% of times in which it was a dead card, right? And that is always the problem with it. I remember that specific turn. You went into turn 5, you cleared your board, and you dropped a Bone Champ, and you were just like, it's like, oh, this is, I can't really use it. Now, Baited Arrow is perfectly fine for you because you had a very heavy hunter deck, right? Even by your standards.
Yes, it was like a mid-range deck for any other class, which means it was a late mid-range deck for hunter. This is not even your normal mid-range hunter. And when I drafted it, I was trying to go for a combo deck and it busted. Like, I got offered 0 Unleash the Hound, 0 Mastiffs, just like, so I was working with like Crushing Walls was like one of my key cards. And the other key card was like Baited Arrow, and the whole thing just looks like it was going to fall apart. And then it went 12, and I was like, all right, you know what? This meta works decently. Hunter still has that advantage, because it wasn't like I was playing without a hero power. The hero power was very, very important to my plan. I just, needed to wait a long time before I started to use it. It was still my closer more often than not.
Yep. Anyways, past that card.
Past that, you have 2 cards that are rated in the 2nd bottom, which is still insanely high. And these are cards you shouldn't take. Because Baited Arrow is actually good. Mark of the Loa is actually good. Fakari Battle Axe is not actually good. I have not seen anyone use it well against me. I have not had the pleasure of drafting it, or maybe I have and I skipped on it because it was in the freaking 2nd bucket. We have it rated like a pretty pedestrian below Yeti kind of level. And you look at the win rates, it's not doing terribly well either. Just ignore this card until they rebucket it. Same with the next card, Pounce. I mean, I can see what they were seeing with it. They were looking at it as a 0 mana backstab-ish kind of card. And it's probably a good card, but 2nd bucket, questionable. I would stay away from it for now, unless you are really that aggressive that you want a 0 mana card like that. Next comes the series of cards in the 3rd bucket. We're not going to go through every bucket. We're just going to go through top cards that should be bucketed higher, so you're going to take it, and then cards that you should like really, really, really avoid. So they got a lot of other ones. Like, really, they quote-unquote misbucketed Blast Wave by putting it in the 3rd bucket, right? Like, definite misbucket. We had a Blast Wave like in the top of the 1st bucket at a 187 or something. And Blast Wave has proven every bit as good as that from other people using it, from us using it, from it being used against us. And people are just scratching the surface of what Blast Wave can do, right? Like, it's a very complicated card. Whenever I was playing, chat just kept screaming at me to use it as if it were a Volcanic Potion, right? And then sometimes chat would be like, why did you use it just as a Volcanic Potion for 5 mana? I'm like, because that's what I needed. That's like how you win. Sometimes you don't need the value, and sometimes you need to hold on to the value because you need those 3 extra cards to win the game. Other times, you need to stop the aggression or else you're dead. But anyway, so they misbucketed cards like that in the 3rd bucket, but it's not the world's biggest deal, right? Because you're only missing 2 buckets. There's other great cards in the 3rd bucket. So it is misbucketed, but it's not going to cause the game to like super break. The things you do have to worry about is something like Belligerent Gnome, which is our card good, bad, and we'll do now. Belligerent Gnome is a 2 mana 1/4 taunt. That's okay. It also gets +1 attack if your opponent has 2 or more creatures. And everyone's like, oh my god, this is a 3 mana card for 2. This is like Tar Creeper. This is insane when it got released. Like, what a really good arena card. And we were like, no. Or like, I don't know. Merps thought it was decent at first, and I just said it was crap at first. And it was, ended up being where I thought it was, by the algorithm at least, a 100. And it is now Blizzard thought it
which
was
is
third
decent.
bucket.
Like that's what I mean by decent. I'm like, sure, it's something
worse than a Raptor, worse than a Croc.
Yeah,
that's
decent.
Okay. I mean, all right. It's
For
performing.
Me, unpickable is like a like, you know, that's where decent is. Like like the tier below that is unpickable.
Well, in the third bucket, it is unpickable.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So its win rate is something like a 52% on HS Replay, which is absolutely terrible. HS Replay's average win rate is like a 54 or 55% or something. Because it's HS Replay. They're tracking people who care enough to use their tools, right? Like, this is not the average player. And it's terrible, not because it's actually like an absurdly terrible card. It's 100, it's fine, but it's super over bucketed. Don't take this card. And if you're wondering why it's terrible, it's because it's a 1/4 for 2. 1/4s are not good. And what's its super ability? Become a bad 3-drop. Like, gain half a mana is its super, ability after turn 2 when you play it later on off curve. Like, it just doesn't add up to a good card. Blizzard didn't realize it. Like, granted, we have a whole algorithm that's, like, meant to, like, calculate this stuff very specifically and very well. But even without it, like, it just... Like, if you know how the game works at a deep enough level, you recognize this card was never going to be great. It was going to be somewhere between, like, meh and, like, eh. So that's normally, like, at bottom of the 4th, top of the 5th bucket.
This is one of those themes that I think people need to remember. And it's one, like, so we have like certain themes that I think every single expansion, and look, I've had to learn throughout like these evaluations, but now I know, right? If a small card has upside and gets more than what you're supposed to get, but never or / almost never on the
turn you want to play it.
The turn that you want to play it on, it sucks.
Mm-hmm.
That's just it. And that's something that I think people still don't recognize. They see it as because they think in their mind a 2-mana 2/4 taunt with, you know, not like it doesn't even have the downside of the Vulgar Homunculus, right?
Yep.
That's amazing. Like, Vulgar Homunculus is a good card. This doesn't even have the downside for 2 mana. And yeah, like, you're going to find so many opportunities for it to be a 2/4 taunt. And yeah, you will, but almost never on turn 2.
Yep.
So if it's not on turn 2, then it's just not worth it. Like, are you playing on turn 3? Well, you know what? Is Phantom Militia on turn 3 any good? Right? No. So it's one of those things where I'm hoping like we can all agree later on. It's like, for stuff like this, like, just remember this. If it is not good on the turn in which you want to play it, it is just not a good card. Yeah. Or it's not as good as you want it to be.
Like, Blizzard's bucketing this with Savage Striker, with Headhunter's Hatchet. That's the 2-mana weapon for Hunter. And with, like, Auchenai Phantasm. Like, the fact that Blizzard thinks these are remotely comparable... It's not like they were just like, oh, 2-drops all suck. They just really thought this guy was a very solid 2-drop. And he's not. And I don't know what kind of testing... This is also not hard to test for, by the way, guys. This is like, just play any amount of arena games, look at the win rates, you know, this guy is going to drop behind. Because it's not tricky, right? Like, there's no skill gap involved here. It's just not going to work. So I don't know. Like, at this point, I'm really thinking that Blizzard has no internal test. Because at first I thought they were just internal testing with bad players. But as these bucketings like come out, and it's been a year of bucketing, and at first we were like, oh, they're going to get it all wrong, obviously. And then we're like, okay, but they've learned something, right? In Boomsday. And it was like, no. They also don't listen to us. And then this next one, they're like, we're more confident in it. We're going to bucket things in more appropriate places instead of being conservative. And they're still not very good about it. So I don't think there's any testing that Blizzard is doing for the arena before the release.
Here's the thing. As of right now, or when they launched it, Blizzard essentially said Belligerent Gnome it's going to be the highest bucketed neutral card.
Yep, right? Highest bucketed neutral card.
So what this means is...
I'll qualify that one more. There's not even another one tied with it. Like, we're not just cherry picking, like, out of, like, 4, the one Blizzard missed. They, like, definitively came out and said, of all the neutral cards we're releasing in this set, in the arena, Belligerent Gnome is the one we got to put in a high bucket. Otherwise.
So, Scorcher
Scorcher's in the
Warbear.
top of the 4th bucket. Scorcher
Yep.
should be in the bottom of the 1st bucket with Primordial Drake. So that's something to watch out for.
Scorcher,
Warbear's in the same place, and Warbear should be put maybe in the 2nd bucket somewhere.
Ticket Scalper, these are all lower than Belligerent Gnome, right?
Yep. Ticket Scalper's in the bottom of the 4th bucket. We're raising Ticket Scalper's score because of the overkill overhaul, and that's probably going to make it end up in the bottom of the 2nd bucket for us. But like they're all under bucketed by like 2 buckets, which is a little severe. Not exactly game ruining, but it does mean you get to pick these cards a lot at the beginning, which without an offering bonus is actually not like terrible, right? Like to be able to pick these cards more.
The thing I see is we have 2 problems right now, right? In terms of all of these bucketing things. So number 1, it's nice that we got some communication with the Arena group, and Ixar appeared on Arena HS to answer some questions. And it seems like they want to kind of address issues a little bit sooner, for example, not have something like Giggling Inventor just be a plague upon the arena meta.
For example, listen to the people who's always right about neutral cards, or not always, like 95% accuracy, while they're batting something like a 60% accuracy at best. So maybe when we come out with like 1 or 2 cards that we really want them to bucket in a certain way every expansion, like maybe listen to us.
That's kind of what I want to say. So in terms of changing stuff quickly, I do hope that they change stuff quickly, right? In terms of, all right, they came out with this stuff. I'm hoping in a week they will rebucket. But it also goes to this thing where if you commit yourself to buckets, you're committing yourself to a system that both of us like. And I think a lot of people who like the arena like the idea of buckets, but you guys have a responsibility to be batting better than you are right now. No one is perfect. You don't need to get it perfect. But if you ask anyone from Arena HS, I don't think anyone, or you shouldn't find anyone, who ranks these cards in and says Belligerent Gnome is the best, definitely by far, significantly better than Scorcher. It's significantly better than Ticket Scalper. It's significantly better than Warbear. It's the best neutral, and you should bucket it the highest. You won't find anyone who says that. So number 1, it's like, who do you have on the team who's deciding this stuff? And
because it's also not by testing. By the way, this is not also by testing. No. It's not like, oh, who's their expert doing this? They're like, oh, we got numbers to back. They have no numbers to back this up. Because there's no way numbers will come out in a way that makes this card high. Like, you see the numbers now on HS Replay. Like, it's just not going to happen.
So here's the thing. Look, for the second thing, I'm encouraged by the fact that the Arena team spoke to us, and they said in not those exact words, but they're like, we'd like to be a little bit more hands-on. We'd like to change things a little bit more quickly, which is great. And I'm not going to say anything more about that because there hasn't been enough time. But as for the first thing, look, for the next expansion, you guys need to get it right at the first go, because it's nice that you guys have the opportunity to change it soon afterwards, but a lot of people are playing immediately afterwards. And it's not like you guys are just getting a couple of cards kind of wrong here or there. There's some major bucketing errors, right? There are some in which if you play the arena at a semi-high level, you should not be getting these things wrong, right? It's not just like disagreements that, ADWCTA, you and I have, or we have with people on Arena HS, right? Like we disagree with people who play, but these are all like reasonable disagreements.
Yeah, like leaderboard players will disagree about certain scores. That will happen. I like to think that we're more right than we're wrong when we have these disagreements, even with other leaderboard players. But regardless, there's also a certain amount. It's like true-false statement, right? Like the number 1 neutral card that you're releasing in this set is Gnome. That every leaderboard player is going to say false, or at least more than 95% of them. And you know what? If you tested it among average players, not even leaderboard players, you're going to see that it's not true. So you're just not doing anything. And then you're getting opinions that are kind of suspect. All right. I mean, it is what it is. They've been very frank and very open that the first bit of time in Arena for each expansion is going to be us alpha testing Arena for them. It's not even beta testing. They're just not doing stuff. So we're alpha testing for them. We've been doing this now for for like more than a year now, since they've been very open that Arena is for alpha testing. As far as this like balance thing is going. And I don't know. I think you're asking for something that they can easily do, and they just don't. And they've consistently not done it, and they've told us they're not doing it. So, like, continuously bringing up that it is easy and they should do it is not, like, nothing's changed, right? Like, they have a position, they're very consistent about it, they're very open about it, they're transparent about it now. And I'm at least hoping that they go back to what they were doing in Witchwood, which is, like, fixing ASAP, right? Like, alpha testing for a week feels bad. Alpha testing, like, Boomsday for 2 months? Come on.
Yeah.
Okay, so we went over the Scorcher, the Amani Warbear. Those are all underbucketed. Magash Announcer's underbucketed. Just take all those whenever you see them. The other neutrals are, like, Sightless Ranger's probably a little underbucketed. We're raising that too. I think it's interesting though. You know how everyone like bitches at us about Ironhide? Blizzard thought it was a tier 5 card, which is about where we thought it was. Like,
I was surprised at it though.
Yeah, I was surprised they didn't think Ironhide Direhorn was going to be crazy. I mean, it's not, but I totally thought that was a card Blizzard was going to rank really high. But to Blizzard's credit, they were very consistent with their overkill cards being ranked in the middling areas, and I think that's where it belongs. I think all of their overkill cards that are creatures are very well balanced. Like, they're excellent for the Arena in terms of balance. They're not excellent in terms of swing, but they were never going to do that. That's like a fundamental like design thing. Like, you created a design that was like the most swingy thing possible. So fine. At least power level wise, they're not out of control, right? So once they bucket these correctly, people will, take them at their own risk.
Sure. Okay. All right. Should we talk about the meta?
Not yet. I want to identify also some cards that are very, very underbucketed in the lower areas, and they should definitely take. The one that I really want to focus on, the two, are Former Champ and Rumble Tusk Shaker. Those are both we rate Former Champ at what, like a 125-ish, Rumble Tusk Shaker like a 115-ish, and they're both in the bottom of the 5th bucket, which is a pretty bad place. And you're not gonna get like basically if you see them, unless you see another heavily underbucketed card, like they're good picks to take, especially Former Champ. The amount of value you get for taking a Former Champ at this level is probably about the same value you get as taking a Dragon Ball Scorcher at 4 top, compared to how far away they are from where they should be bucketed. So it's easy to look at Dragon Ball Scorcher, our number 1 neutral card, and I think the number 1 neutral card for most, if not all, Arena players who do who do preview cards. It's easy to see that and be like, oh, that's underbucketed. But Former Champ, you get the same amount of value for picking it as you do Dragon Ball Scorcher, because it is 1.5 buckets lower. And when you compare Dragon Ball Scorcher and Former Champs where they should be, it should only be like 1.5 buckets lower. So their relative distance is the same. They're both heavily underbucketed. And Rumble Tusk Shaker is not like as good value, but it's still very underbucketed at bottom of the 5th bucket. So these are good places to get some value. Snapjaw Shellfighter, I also want to point out, that's a card that they put in the 6th bucket, which is crazy. Like, wow. That is our 3rd best card. I think even after the adjustments for the overkill cards, I think Scalper might beat it after we adjust it, but it'll still be definitely top 5. And they put it in 6, so yeah, those are the ones that like stand out as far as regular neutral cards go. Take these cards. As far as class cards go, you guys probably know the ones that get super underbucketed, and there's not a lot of like really great insane class cards that are not super obvious here, and so Blizzard underbucketed most of them, so you should draft most of them. but they didn't underbucket it by much. They underbucketed it by like a bucket, a bucket and a half. And so you're going to get some value out of it, but not insane value. The one that stands out to me as being very underbucketed is Shriek. We're lowering the score from where we have it. We didn't consider some curve things to it, but we won't be lowering by that much, and they have it in the 4th bucket. They also underbucket almost all the double-sided board clears in Warlock, so you are going to get into this situation where there's too many double-sided board clears in Warlock. Other things that are super underbucketed, Scorch for Mage. It's in the 5th bucket. This is like Wing Blast level, right? Better than Wing Blast even. Devastate. We were wrong about this card too, and we're raising it. We probably rated it around the 5th bucket as well, but having played with and against the card, it should definitely be higher. That's the warrior card that deals 4 damage to a damaged creature.
Really? How much higher are we putting it?
Well, we have it at like a 98 right now, so we're going to move it like 15 points higher, I think.
Oh. I don't care so much for that card, but okay.
It's like a 1 mana execute, like the vast majority of times. And what else? There's one other card I want. Oh yeah, Dragon Roar. If you haven't heard the uproar about Dragon Roar, it's in the bottom of the 4th bucket for God knows what reason. This is like something that everybody was like, what? Just count your dragons. This card's insane. Why is it 2 mana? Why are we doing this? And especially in Arena, when you're missing high quality cards. That's kind of the point of Arena, having a good chance at high quality cards and getting card draw at such cheap value. Take those cards. Okay, so that's it for. Also, I just want to point out another thing, just because I like to point out when Blizzard's being stupid. Fire Tree Witch Doctor is in the 7th bucket. The 7th bucket's for like nearly like terrible cards. It's Gurubashi Chicken, right? And this Fire Tree Witch Doctor, if you didn't know, you don't see this in the Arena, because once you're in the 7th bucket, you pretty much never get offered it. You get offered it like once every like 3-4 runs. Fire Tree Witch Doctor is a 2 mana 2/2, and if you have a dragon, you're like discovering another dragon or something, discovering a card in your deck. I forget what, but you do something, you get a card out of it. Let's see. Okay, you're discovering a spell if you're holding a dragon. So it's a 2/2 with a really big upside. Blizzard's like, nope, not going to make the cut. To be fair, it's not a great card or anything, but it's definitely not 7th bucket. So that's an interesting place to get some value if you happen to be offered that card. Okay. On the other hand, what Blizzard did think was a great card, enough for at least the bottom of the 6th bucket, is Crowd Roaster. The 7 mana 7/4, just to show you how little they know about the Arena. This is like 2 cards that have heavy synergy with dragons. One is a 7/4 7 mana that deals 7 damage if you have a dragon. So it's unplayable unless you have a dragon. And if you have a dragon, it's alright. Or you have Fire Tree Witch Doctor, which is a 2 mana 2/2. Totally playable, but not good, like card at 2. Like, Fire Tree Witch Doctor without the ability is about the same tier score as Crowd Roaster with the ability. Like, that's the gap between the 2 cards. And Blizzard's like, Crowd Roaster is going to be better than Fire Tree Witch Doctor. Alright, whatever. Okay, moving on. We're not putting these buckets up on the tier list until Blizzard rebuckets. Unless they don't rebucket by next week, in which case we'll put them up, and then when they rebucket, it'll be out of date, and then we'll find it again. But once again, remember, in order to rebucket, we need these actual stats, and we get these stats from Arena drafts. So go use Arena drafts so that they can track more drafts.
All right.
Okay, that's the bucketing. Now let's talk about the game. We're actually in the game. If you guys don't know, the Grinning Goat has so far gotten more 12-win runs than non-12-win runs.
Yes, we have been doing quite well. And, we've been playing, in terms of what we've been getting 12 wins with, it's pretty much been Warriors and Hunters, right? And also that weird Druid deck, but we don't talk about that one. But it's been Warriors and Hunters. And if you look at HS replay stats, what do you know? Warrior is number 1. It has been number 1, but it's still number 1 at 53.7%. Number 2 is Rogue at 52.5%, so a decent jump down. And then number 3 is Hunter, crazy, at 51% flat.
Keep in mind,
And
this has not been micro adjusted at all by Blizzard since like before this expansion release. So it's all differences that the expansion has made. And Hunter was like near the bottom on these like average stats. Hunter was never that bad, but it was near the bottom because people don't know how to play Hunter. And it's not like people all of a sudden figured out how to play Hunter. But these new cards and this new meta is very Hunter friendly.
yeah, so like Hunter's number 3, and there's a pretty big jump from Hunter to Mage. Mage is number 4 with 49.5%. So you're looking at a 1.5% win rate difference between number 3 and number 4. That's pretty significant. And Mage is number 4 as well. And you should be seeing those kind of like very prevalent in the arena as well. And then we have Warlock down at number 5.
Which is what we're playing today later.
I know, which is an interesting conversation. But yeah, if you guys thought that this was going to change anything up in terms of knocking Warriors down, it hasn't. They are still number 1 by a good margin.
Yep. So Shaman's at the very bottom. I think all the classes are balanced right now except Warrior and Shaman, really.
It's a good meta in terms of kind of the separation between all the classes.
Yeah. And I don't know, just going by feel, I like how the meta feels right now. Because there's a lot of variety in the kinds of decks that you see. We have the maximum amount of like card diversity that's allowed in the meta, because of it's right before our rotation. This is the last set of the year, so that's helping it out. And Blizzard's done a pretty good job overall with the past buckets, not in terms of speed, but in terms of eventually like at least getting like 90% of their cards in the right buckets. And micro adjusting sort of like enough. The last micro adjustments that happened in the middle of the Hallows Eve event, which boosted up Paladins a bit, which like knocked down Warlocks, like that's been like I've been feeling that. That's been a really good thing. They needed to do it maybe 2 months before that, but at least it's paying off dividends now. And so the meta is a meta in which aggro works, mid-range works, control works. Our first 3 12-win runs were literally like aggro hunter and then very mid-rangey druid, and then a very control warrior. Where and my control warrior, I had 0 warpaths, I think, and definitely 0 weapons. Like that's how good warrior is now. In case you're wondering, like I just didn't do anything. I'm just like, okay, now I taunt, now I armor, now I make myself some dragons, and I have some dragons in my deck, and my dragons are really good. Here's a Ysera, here's a Deathwing, here's another Deathwing. What are you gonna do, right? Like, I also had a Zilliax, which was insane. But yeah, it's the Warriors are kind of silly right now. Don't play Warrior. Like, don't be an asshole, right? You remember back in the day when Mage was super OP, and like Rogue was like just as good as Mage, but required a little bit of skill.
Yeah, I do remember this.
And this was for a long time, and everyone who played Mage was considered a total asshole. That's Warrior now. Don't play Warrior. Rogue is pretty much as good as Warrior.
Didn't you play Warrior?
What?
Like, didn't you just play Warrior like 2 days ago?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the beginning of the meta. I'll play it once, right? I want to like play a Dragon Roar. All right, I'm allowed to play a Dragon Roar. I need to feel Devastate for myself, right, and see how good it is. I'm doing it for testing purposes, but I'm not going to play a Warrior again until they do a micro adjust or a rebucketing at least.
Oh, so you waited until you played it, and now you're going to tell other people not to play it.
Okay, you can play one Warrior run in this meta just to test out the cards, but then get off Warrior. Like, don't be one of those people that's like, I'm going to play Warrior all the time. Maybe if you're going for the leaderboard or something and you don't really care about being nice. And you're the important thing about Warrior right now, and I found this out because of HS Replay released something. Warrior is the number 2 most picked class in the arena right now. Number 2 most picked. No one even freaking knew how to play Warrior 6 months ago. And now it's the number 2 most picked class. That's not like, just of the people who are really good at this game. That's like of all HS Replay players, which again have an average win rate of like 55%. So these are not like the best players. These are like somewhat slightly above average players. Like our win rates are like 75% in on the average over across all the metas. Right? This is 55%. The dead average player is like 50%, I assume. So Blizzard needs to knock Warrior down.
Well, time to start a new movement.
I forgot who it was, but someone was giving me a hashtag. Hashtag Arena Warriors matter too much now.
Yeah. That's a thing. Or you could just play Hunter and embrace the face.
Yeah.
There you go.
Speaking of Hunter and embracing the face, you put up, we have not had this in a long time, but an original video for YouTube.
I know. It's not just regurgitated content from our stream. Wow. Extra effort. PogChamp. Yeah, so I got tired of people, number one, playing Warrior, but number two, thinking that Warriors are unbeatable, or in the most disgusting way possible, thinking that you need to out-Warrior them, or I've seen this very often. A lot of people are picking Priest now, right? Because Priest can have a favorable matchup against Warriors by going huge. Like, it's like, how do you beat the size and longevity of Warriors? You get bigger and you get longer. So
that's fair.
Right. So what do you do up against all of those classes and this sort of arms race in terms of like going big and going into fatigue? You just kill them on turn 5. That's it. So if you guys are curious how to do that, you can go onto our YouTube channel, YouTube Grinning Goat, and you can search up a draft guide I did. It's like 45 minutes long. And you can spend a great 45 minutes learning how to draft.
45 minutes long. So that means you try to keep it at 20 minutes?
I tried. But yeah, learn how to draft aggro hunter and just go face. And I've seen some people have some success with it. Some people have tweeted at me and messaged me and be like, oh, this is amazing. Unfortunately, I've also had people be like, hard. Yeah, I went like 1-3. It is very hard. And
we keep saying this every time on the Lightforge, but like people do not give credit to aggro as being like an intelligent man's game. People keep thinking control is an intelligent man's game. I'll tell you right now, as someone who plays both aggro and control, Merps is mostly aggro now, switching into mid-range now and then. I play the whole spectrum. Mostly I try to stay mid-range, but then like when my draft goes aggro, I'll go aggro. Not as aggro as Merps, because, you know, I start off not aggro, so you never get that aggro. Weak. Hey, I got my 12 Wiz with a crappy deck, okay? With Hunter, doing just normal, boring stuff. The whole chat's like, what is happening? And I'm like, yeah, you know, this is just how things are sometimes.
Yeah.
But sometimes I've also...
the arena rewards fear.
Yeah, but I also play control sometimes when my deck gets really big. And I'm like, well, I think I can outlast a lot of warriors. Let's just lean on that. Every time I go big, there is way less thought per turn than when I'm going fast. Like, we're talking like, if your average turn to win a game as the warrior is something like 16 turns, and your average turns to win the game as a hunter is 8 turns, you're making more decisions as the hunter in those 8 turns than you are as the warrior in 16 turns. Like, impactful decisions that will affect the game. That's how it is right now, because warrior's kind of brain dead. Not like totally brain dead. Like, this is not like back in the heyday of Paladin brain deadness. That was terrible. This is a step up from that, but it's still not. It's not the kind of like intelligent control game that you would play, for example, if you were like playing MTG control, right? Like, this is Hearthstone control. It's Hearthstone Arena control. It's better than Paladin, but aggro really is where a lot more mid-range and aggro are kind of where the thought process is more.
Yep. All right. So once again, go check out that video if you guys got 45 minutes to kill, or if you just want to smork down a lot of other players, make them uninstall, and also not have to spend 2.5 to 3 hours to just get 12 wins. Boom.
Yep. And if you don't want to do that and you want to play Hunter anyway, slow mid-range Hunter can get you 12 wins too. That video is probably not coming up for another week or so because we have a backlog of 12 wins. But yeah, It's a good meta for Hunter. They're very strong
If
right
you
now.
want to play mid-range Hunter, Dr. Stein, fellow Infinite player, came out with a great written guide that you can go find on Arena HS. He lays out all of the principles of mid-range Hunter, and it's a very well-written, very long, but very, very well-written guide as well. So between my video and Dr. Stein's uh, kind of written guide over on Arena HS, you guys can get good at Hunter and start the counter revolution, right? The original revolution was Arena Warriors Matter, and now it's Embrace the Face. Beat back those Warriors. Do it for
Okay,
the
to be
longevity of
fair,
Arena.
mid-range Hunter is terrible against Warrior.
His isn't actually like your mid range.
So he's just playing like faster mid-range. That's still not the best against Warrior. It can like, I don't know. I feel
have no
like
comment on it other than he has found a tremendous amount of success with it. And for those of you who are too weak to play like the true aggro Hunter, you can kind of fall back into ADWCTA and Dr. Stein's Hunter and feel a little bit shameful, but still get those wins. Whatever you do to get those wins,
the pressure. The thing about Hunter is more than any other class. A mage that used to do this until Blizzard nerfed Mana Worm. Now they don't really do this as much. But that pressure against your face, like against your opponent's face, it's so impactful. And it warps the entire game. And you have to know when you need to warp the game in that way. And when you need to just like control the board. Because you're still mid-range. You don't get to like, oh, let's start going to face on like turn like 3. Because like, and take those kinds of risks that you would as a more aggressive Hunter would. But for mid-range, the principle is you put enough pressure on your opponent's face that they then have to like remove you all the time. And then you force them into making these moves that they would not make otherwise because of their pressure. And because of those moves, you put them in the, if the Hunter has this, then I'm dead positions. And then you have those cards. That's like how mid-range Hunter works. Especially against a class like Warrior or Priest or Druid, where you don't really have a hero power. You just have a double-sided reduce both of our mana card. But okay.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
Wow. I mean, it's really not the best. I would never recommend a slow mid-range Hunter to anybody as their like go-to draft style. But you got to go with the draft, right? Like this is like you can't be so committed to your arc. I mean, you can, but like you end up with some weird like kind of results. Like your Shaman draft, right? You were very committed to being the like spread the board, bloodlust, win the game Shaman. And you had 2 fungals that night, but you didn't get any bloodlust. And from the very beginning, I was just kind of like
me like testing to see if it still worked.
Right, exactly.
There's a reason I didn't come out with a Shaman guide. I was like, because I don't think it works anymore.
Well, no, it could work. You didn't have any bloodlust though, right? Like you didn't draft any bloodlust because you were not offered any bloodlust, and that really made your that made your thing a lot worse. But you're not going to be offered a bloodlust like half the time, almost. Like I feel like almost half the time you're not going to be offered a bloodlust.
Yeah, I don't know the percentages anymore, obviously.
So when things get a little more like, oh, you need this or you need that, you have a little more trouble. Shaman is the worst. Hunter's still fine because what do you really need in an aggro Hunter, right? 1-drops, curve, right? You need like giant broad categories of stuff. You don't need like bloodlust, and that really helps a lot. And that's also why aggro Druid works really well because you don't need like Power of the Wild or like Savage Roar. You have like 4 cards that do basically the same thing. Whereas Shaman just doesn't. And that's why Shaman's in a weird place right now. And by weird, I mean bad. And they're going to micro adjust it, and you're going to see Shamans with like 3 Crushing Hands and 2 Hexes again. Because that's the only way Shamans can get to 50%. Okay. So overall on the meta, we usually talk about speed. The meta is faster. The meta is faster than it used to be. Or I should say, the meta is more polarized than it used to be.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if the average is faster, but it used to be much harder to play faster decks. It's easier to play faster decks now. And people usually like faster decks if they can play faster decks, at least to a certain extent. And we were very much on the slow side in the Boomsday meta. So overall, you'll feel the meta being faster. You also, with the rise of Hunter, when you're drafting a deck, you always have to draft in a way that will stop a Hunter, or else you will lose to Hunters. Right? I had a pretty good Mage deck. It went 9 wins, but I lost like maybe 8 wins. But I lost 3 times to Hunters, and each time I'm just like, "Yep, I'm about to lose." It's like turn 2. I'm like, I think I lost. Like, because my mage was built as if it was on day 1, and I was building it as if it was a Boomsday mage, and just like testing out Blast Wave, which is incredible, by the way. But Blast Wave isn't really a hunter killer. It's a 5-mana volcanic potion, right? Blast Wave is like a punish other kinds of classes deal. And you really just got to build your deck more to be able to stop that early aggression. Heals are extremely, extremely valuable. Like, one of the reasons why my slow hunter did so well was because we had like 2-3 heals in the deck. I know that's weird for you, Merps, to hear this, but we had a number of heal cards in the deck, and I specifically picked them because the rest of our deck was like so card drawy, like so much like there's just so much stuff going on that I was like, all right, I actually need to survive longer than most decks do. And in order to do that, because I couldn't get enough taunts in the deck, because hunters don't have very good taunts in their class cards, I just had to pick heals. And that's a part of all of your drafting considerations now. Because things are so polarized, being able to heal yourself is now much more important than it's ever been before, unless you are a very strict aggro deck. In the same way, being able to have a little bit of reach, like 2-3 cards that can give you like 4 damage of reach, is much more important than before, unless you're like a strict, I taunt up and I end up with more cards than my opponent, like Warrior or Priest. Which is good, right? Because that's strategy. That's a lot of thinking and a lot of interplay on the board, and it allows you to be flexible, and it really allows mid range to shine a bit more. Because mid-range was having a pretty rough time in Boomsday. It was already struggling a bit in Witchwood, but in Boomsday, it was really not doing well. And now, mid-range is kind of back, as is aggro. And control's still there. It's not like control went anywhere. It's just no longer super dominant. It's regularly, balanced.
Yep. No, it sounds pretty good. Like, we're at a point where lots of classes have longevity, but it's not like longevity in previous metas where like games went longer because they removed, right? Like, you face the mages and the priests and the shamans that just removed. It's not like that anymore. Boards remain somewhat complicated. And taunt minions do more than ever. But yeah, it's definitely a little bit more board centric.
Yeah.
So
in our chat, Tex makes a good point. Tex says no longer a threat and response meta. I think that is probably the best way to put it.
I think so. Yeah.
We were talking about the answer response meta. This was 2017 with the introduction of
all right, you just said threat and
Ungoro.
response, and now you're saying answer and response again.
Well, okay, you get the idea. 2017 with the arrival of Ungoro, and then when the spell bonus went away, the threat and response meta kind of went away a bit, and now 3 expansions in, this is probably the least. Well, no, that's not true. Boomsday was probably the least threat and response meta. This is a little more threat and response than Boomsday, but it's still within range. And if people are asking how it's different than Boomsday, a little bit faster. You got to watch out for aggro now because it's a little bit more diverse, and because of the nature of a lot of these new cards that are coming out, it's a lot more swingy. But if you're a smart player, you're in a better position to control the swings. Like, you're given more opportunity to do things that will like sacrifice a bit of tempo or a bit of card advantage or a bit of face damage, and to prevent the swings. So you feel more agency. Like, sure, if they don't have that card that you're trying to prevent, you've kind of just lost a little bit of tempo or card advantage or face damage or whatever, but you can do the risk assessment, right? It's no longer like, do I have card X? If I don't, I lose.
Yep. Cool.
Okay. What else can we say about Rastakhan? So overall, I know in Boomsday, when Boomsday first came out, we said it was the best meta ever. And that was with Giggling unnerfed. Once Giggling got nerfed, it was definitely the best meta ever. Still can be improved, but as far as Blizzard's arena experience goes, it was the best. This, so far, I think it's on par with the prior meta. It's a little bit more swingy, but you also have a little bit more control and diversity. And I think whenever they get the buckets right, and they get that in, it may be the best meta ever again. Like, this is why we don't make like posts and stuff anymore, because Blizzard's doing overall a good job. Even if the parts that they're not doing a good job on are kind of like difficult to understand why or how and show that their process is still really broken, they have, at the very least, the tools that can make a balanced meta, that they sometimes use to make a balanced meta. They are better than they were before at addressing arena needs. And they got rid of the spell bonus, which is what was holding back Arena for like over a year. So they're kind of just letting Arena do its thing, and it's overall in a good spot.
Yeah, I would agree with it. It's fine right now, and we're just hoping that they kind of address the misbucketing soon.
Yep. Any more Rastakhan things? Oh, if you're wondering if there's an offering bonus, there is not an offering bonus. Arena Draft seems to suggest that there's no offering bonus, but so the sample sizes aren't terribly big right now, but things are weird. Like, I think Blizzard has weird bugs in their offering odds again. That's why people think there's offering bonuses. Because there's certain cards that are showing up a lot less than they should, and other cards are showing up a lot more than they should. We're talking like, because if they're showing up like 50% more than they should, I'm like, whatever, sample size. But if they're showing up like 15 times more than another card, and we have a sample size of like, 1,000, that should be enough that doesn't happen, assuming that they're actually equal cards that should show up the same. So I don't know. We'll see when we get when Arena Drafts gets larger sample sizes and shows them to us. But there may be some issues there. Yeah. Anything else? What would you say? Name some things that will help a player adjust to Rastakhan, because every time we have like people who are like, oh, I used to be a 6-win player, now I'm a 3-win player, and we're like, sample size, but also you're probably not adjusting correctly.
Yeah, this is advice I've said before, but I think is the most important. You really have to not only know your class within the draft. I would say these days, especially, the draft matters a little bit more than it used to, like at any other point. And just because going into a draft and while you're drafting, you really have to identify, it's like, okay, what is this class's identity nowadays? How does this class win? And what do I have to draft towards? Essentially, because we have a very polarized meta, right? You're going to have the hunters that you're probably not going to face a lot of Merps hunters, at least not yet. Maybe my video will blow up, who knows? But, those hunters will put pressure on you, right? And then you're going to have a decent amount of those warriors, those priests, and big mages now, right? Like there is such a thing as like big mage now, that will outvalue you if you don't sort of like meet them there. So you have to like immediately identify and say like, okay, this is sort of where we're at in the meta. So I either need to meet all those warriors like up there. Either have to like go down and sort of like go really fast. And if you're in the middle, you can still win. It is possible. Like,
I'm averaging almost possible. 10 wins per run, mostly being in the middle.
Sure. I mean, we're doing really well, but the margin of error and the amount of skill required to win with a mid-range deck is a lot higher now. Your margin of error certainly is a lot lower, right? And like, I think our boring druid deck shows a very mediocre mid-range druid deck can still get there, but I would say that's number one, not the type of deck that you want over and over and over again, right? I think you would agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't think consistently, that's something that we want. And number two, those sort of decks really operate on like a very thin razor's edge in terms of you have to make really good decisions, and you just have to play closer to perfect than one of those like double Warpath, double Dragon's Roar, double Tarn Lord, execute kind of decks. So that would be the advice I would give to everyone. Identify sort of where the meta is, and I just laid it out for you. And then if you're drafting a class, you have to identify, it's like, okay, am I going to go full control here? And for some classes, it's easy to kind of fall into that, right? If you're a warrior, like 95% of the time, you're going to draft a competent, at least, control deck. And just if you go mid-range, it can certainly work, like ADWCTA one with a mid-rangey kind of longer game hunter, and also that druid run that I still have no idea.
I've also done it with mage and warlock. Like mid-range just works with all the classes, but it's mid-range.
It is the
never looks good.
Would say, yeah, it is the most dangerous meta right now, I would say, for that mid-range style. And just recognize that, like we're not at a point in which you can't win with a certain type of deck.
We were there. Like Boomsday, it was really hard to win with mid-range in the second half of Boomsday.
Yeah, it was really hard.
So
but
we're in a better spot right now for mid-range, right? Like archetypes are even out a bit more. I'm not gonna say mid-range is easier than other classes. But one thing that what you mean by it's like harder is if you don't have a class identity, you have to figure out your identity within the game, right? Like if you're facing a fast deck, you need to figure out that they're fast really quickly and then play your mid-range. What mid-range does is gives you more options than control and gives you more options than aggro. But you have to be able to like use those options. And the only way to smartly use those options is to know what your opponents are doing. So you have to like, there's so much like figuring out and like feel and intuition as well as experience. But like, at least we're in a place where mid-range functions. And we were not in that place. Like mid-range,
some classes also changed a little bit.
Some classes, all classes changed a little bit, I think.
Well,
even warriors aren't the same.
Fundamentally changed, like from like a playstyle that really worked before didn't work. So about, I would say, a month ago, right? Warlocks were in a place in which you could still play that like very removal heavy warlock, right? Like the very removal heavy warlock, and it was
not a month ago. It was like a month and a half ago. That was before the patch. That's pre-patch because they
But nowadays, and I don't want to say definitively, but from my own experience and from just watching streams and like sort of getting the feedback from other Infinite players, that style just doesn't win anymore. Just because you're doing something that warriors do so much better, and warriors present more threats, right? It's like your removals are not as good as the warriors, and not as plentiful as well as the warriors.
Remember back when we were saying this about mage? It's like, oh, mage can't be control anymore. Why? Because warlocks just like, they'll just outcard you in the end, and they have more board clears than you. And now we're saying the same thing about warlocks to warrior. That's how freaking ridiculous warrior is. It's crowded out 2 classes now in its control archetype. Ugh.
Yeah.
Okay. Rastakhan at its base creates more snowball potential. And that is what is punishing, right? When Merp says like, oh, in a mid-range deck, you have to play like perfectly to win. You have to play perfectly because any advantage you fail to take could have allowed you to snowball a lot more than it used to. And any disadvantage that you suffer because of a misplay will allow your opponent to snowball a lot more than they used to. So rather than every decision being a one-on-one decision and you need like 16 points in the end to win if your opponent gets like 14 points or whatever, now every point is worth like 1.2 points. And then the next time it's worth 1.4 points. And you can see the effects of it. And each time you fail in one thing, like you start back at 0, right? You start back at getting 1 point again. So you want to chain together these like combos of like good decisions to win, which is not a problem if you're always making perfect decisions. But you make one misplay these days, especially as mid range, and it feels pretty bad. Like I think I was mentally slipping or something on the rogue run that I currently have. I was like 3-0, and then late game I made just like a total mental error. And I think I would have lost anyway, but it was maybe like 30% win, 60%, 70% loss, and I just clearly lost. And the very next game, on like turn 4, I made like a stupid misplay again. And I was like, immediately, I was like, I should have done that. Like, that's not how it works. Like, I pre-hit, I shouldn't have pre-hit with my dagger, and then I just lost that game too. Like, it was very clear I was going to lose that game. Why? Because I chose to pre-hit instead of not pre-hit. That's normally in a typical meta, very rarely a deciding case of whether you win or not, right? Like that'll make you win like 5% more in games if you're pre-hitting correctly, like assuming that situation comes up. But these days, it's up like 25, 30% whether you win or lose a game if you pre-hit or not, and you make the wrong decision for it. And that's where we're at. That's good, right? That's good for skill to matter more. But you're right, it is very dangerous also now to be in mid-range, which is fair. I think for the flexibility mid-range gives, it should be the hardest to play class. Because if it's also the easiest to play class, then you're kind of punishing control and aggro for being less flexible, for requiring more like drafting like busts, right? It's hard to bust on mid-range except value-wise. Like Blizzard could just offer you lower buckets and then okay, your draft busted. But it's hard to like totally bust. You can bust drafting aggro. You can really bust drafting control. And so if you're trying to draft aggro or control, one of the skills is to know when your draft is salvageable but has a pretty damn high chance of busting, and then moving it like from aggro to faster mid-range or from control to slower mid-range, and like salvaging it and being like, I'll be happy with 6 wins. I don't want a non-functional deck that gets me like 3 or 4 or 2. But if mid-range gets too powerful, as let's say it used to be in Classic, then all anyone will ever tell you to do is draft mid-range. And that would be correct. So this is, buckets allow for this, right? And I think we're in a good meta where the buckets are being very, very good. Because when the buckets first came out, just mid-range just started dying. Because control and aggro were both more powerful. And then aggro started dying because control was just more powerful because of the card pool. And having a very board-centric, snowball-y kind of meta, or not meta, like a new card set, I think really even things out in the arena.
Yep. All right. I think that's good. It's a good meta breakdown. And look, the wins are there to be taken. And whether you play aggro or play control, I think a lot of people have done pretty well. I've watched other streams. So if you're going for the leaderboard, or if you just want to build up some gold to play Dirty Constructed, it's a good time, right? It's a good time. And it's also a good time to build up some of these fundamental skills in order to have future success as well, because it is so board-centric right now.
Yep. And again, don't play Warrior, because Warrior's not helping you with anything. One last note about the tier list. The tier list is going to be updated on Tuesday morning. What's going to happen is creatures with overload, minions with overload, are going to be moved up, but like differently. It's hard to explain. Like I know everyone's like, "Oh, Direhorn, isn't it good?" And we're like, "No, it's doing."
Wait, overload?
Sorry, overkill.
Okay.
Overkill. Overload is not moving. And they're like, Direhorn, it's good, right? You're gonna move it up to where it should have always been. And we're like, well, we fixed a bunch of things. We made things deeper, more advanced system for overkill. And guess what happened with Direhorn?
Did it go down? Nothing. Okay.
It's gonna move up. It's gonna move up maybe a point or two, but then there's recentering, so it may not move at all. But Scalper is going up like 10 points. The rushing person that gives you 2/1/1s, I forget what that's called. That's going up.
The Ranger.
The Ranger's going up. Yeah. Baited Arrow went up a ton. Soltharos is going up again. Yeah. I don't know what to tell you guys. We're also fixing some other like one-offs that were not correct before, like Devastate. But overall, the tier list is like most of the overkill things that get moved. It's going to get moved by like 5 points or less. Scalper was a big exception, and the charging person. So I think we hit like if you're talking about accurate within 10 points. I think we're still hitting like a 95% accuracy, which is better than what we did in Boomsday, because we screwed up a couple times on Boomsday, which is nice. Not as good as our Witchwood hit rate, I think. But yeah. So I think the tier list is overall in a good spot. You'll see the changes next time, and it's going to move actually a bunch of things significantly up, but they're like really bad cards. So you're moving cards from like the 70s to like the 80s. Because we added a new system of how we're calculating how you build decks. That's going to favor like deck construction things in a I think more realistic way than we were doing it before. Because what we were doing it before was almost like, oh, this is the last card in a very average deck. What would you take? And now we're really doing it more like this is the middle card of the deck, and so far it's average, but you can then move the second half of your deck to wherever you want. So a lot of those deck synergy type things will be moving up somewhat. And the super heavy deck synergy ones will be moving up a lot, but those are usually the really bad cards anyway. There will be very few cards that move from you shouldn't draft it to okay, you can think about drafting it in the middle of a deck and like moving in that direction. Yeah. So that's that. Thanks for everyone who helped review the tier list and posted thoughts. Those are really helpful as usual. And we'll be making another post on Arena HS, talking about the update on Tuesday. Short post, not a lot's going to be going on, but hopefully that will get us to where we need to be. And after that, I kind of want to only worry about buckets. All right.
That sounds good.
That's it from us. See you guys next week for more Rastakhan talk. Until then, let's bring up a card good bad. You know what? Let's talk about.
Didn't we have a card good bad?
We had a card good bad for today, which was the belligerent gnome. But I want to talk about a good card, and I want people to weigh in on our Reddit for next week, so that we can see how they feel about this card. Because this is a difficult card, and I want to jump right into it. It's Snapdraw Shellfighter. I want that to be our next card good bad, because it's such an interesting card, and I want to hear what other people's experiences are with it. So Snapdraw Shellfighter is our next card good bad. If you have thoughts about it, if you've used it, if you've seen it used against you in really good or not so good ways, chime in. It's on our subreddit in the Grinning Goat. The post will be up sometime in the next couple days. And we will look over all the comments before we do our next card good bad. And we're going to try to keep it rolling for this expansion to always be one card good bad ahead, so we can get this discussion going. All right. That's it for us. Until next time, this is ADWCTA.
This is Merps. See you guys.